what you said, it's kind of the hand you've been dealt. Does not determine your destiny by any means in terms of your physical health. You may just have a harder time doing certain things, but so when genetics matter a ton just to get an idea of your health, but it's not the end all be all. And I've seen people in the worst shape of their lives, just from a blood work and genetic point of view, just have everything going against them, and they still get in the best shape of their life at, 50 years old. So it's not a death sentence by any means.
All right. Welcome to Stronger Weekly. I'm your host, Jesse Karajat. Thank you so much for being here. You just heard an excerpt from my awesome conversation with this week's special guest, Dr. Jake Huebner joined the show to talk all things genetic testing and blood work. It's an emerging sort of field and specialty in the world of health and fitness, and I am personally just stepping into that world, understanding the importance of lifting up the old hood and understanding what's happening in our blood and our organs and in our bodies and minds and all those things. And Dr. Huebner is a specialist that helps people interpret results from genetic testing and blood work and basically apply actionable steps to improve certain markers that are an indicator of overall health and longevity. So it's just an awesome conversation. Dr. Huebner actually happens to live here locally. I know him personally, and he's just a great guy, and he's got a great handle on all that. So I hope you really enjoy the conversation. Just as an added bonus, because I knew that Dr. Huebner was coming on the show, I got my very first comprehensive blood panel done. I got the test drawn on Monday. I got the results in just in time to shoot them over to Dr. Huebner. So on the back half of that conversation with Dr. Huebner, he actually does a live consultation of what he saw, what are the risk factors, what are some of the good things, and I was pleasantly surprised in some areas, but most importantly, what are the levers that I can pull in my own life and lifestyle to just mitigate some of the risk and just get an overall healthy result. So it was an awesome conversation, lots of laughs, lots of facts dropped, lots of fancy words that I don't know how to say or repeat back to you, but it was really, really great. So hang on for the back end of that conversation. But as we always do, we're going to jump into the health and fitness headlines of the week. Let's go into it. All right, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving week. Your first headline of the week. So big headlines this week on ultra processed foods, UPFs, and why so many public health scientists say they become a global threat. So according to a sweeping 3-part series in The Lancet, authored by 43 global experts and supported by UNICEF and the World Health Organization, ultra processed food consumption is rising everywhere in the world. And the companies behind these products are profiting on a scale that shocked even the researchers in the 3-part series. So CNN reports that over 50% of the $2.9 trillion paid to food company shareholders since 1962 came from UPF manufacturers alone. So in other words, half of all revenue just from UPF food. So Dr. Carlos Monteiro, the University of Sao Paulo researcher who coined the term ultra-processed food, puts it bluntly, quote, UPF consumption is increasing everywhere around the world, fueled by powerful global corporations. So what are these companies actually doing? According to co-author Barry Popkin of UNC Chapel Hill, Go Tar Heels, quote, they turn corn, wheat, beans, and other whole foods into a colorless and flavorless sawdust, which is then reconstructed with artificial flavorings and additives. Let's pause there for a second. So in other words, they're taking these core foods, corn, wheat, beans, and other stuff, cheap stuff, just grinding it together into sawdust, reforming it, shaping it, and then putting in artificial flavors to make it taste like what they say it is. Just think about that, folks. It's disgusting. The Lancet review found 92 out of 104 studies showed UPFs linked to chronic diseases of all kinds. So they're associated with obesity, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and premature death. We talk a lot on the show about preventable deaths, right? Obesity, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, all things. Cancer, you can argue that, but that can be preventable with proper nutrition and lifestyle habits. So randomized trials show UPFs cause people to eat 500 to 1,000 extra calories every day, even when nutrient matched to whole foods. even healthier UPFs, quote unquote, healthier, lead to worse outcomes than real, minimally processed food. So Dr. Monteiro warns, quote, the displacement of traditional diets by UPFs is the most convincing explanation for the global pandemic of chronic diseases. So the widespread prevalence of this shit, to put it what it is, started right around the time where you start to see the trends of these diseases increasing and mortality decreasing. It's nonsensical. So some countries like Mexico, Norway, the UK, Ireland, and South Korea now restrict UPF marketing to children, but experts say the US remains highly vulnerable. 70% of food on American grocery store shelves is ultra processed, and the CDC reports American children get 62% of their daily calories from these poisons. That's my word there. So look, if you want to dramatically improve your health and dramatically increase the likelihood that you'll live longer and healthier, reduce inflammation, improve your metabolic markers, and stop overeating, cut this shit out of your diet. Ultra processed foods is killing us. It's killing us. And it's disgusting that these companies are profiting from our poor health outcomes. Next up, teens who play video games daily are 3 times more likely to gamble, truly gamble, later in life. So this new study finds. So a new paper published in the Journal of Behavioral Addiction, sounds legit, reported this week by Medical Express, warns that heavy gaming may be priming children and teenagers for future real-life gambling habits. So researchers analyzed data from over 2,300 adolescents, finding that teens who played video games every day were 3 times more likely to gamble. Teens who played multiplayer games were 5 times more likely to experience gambling-related harms, and boys were significantly more vulnerable than girls. So lead author Dr. Helena Chambers said, quote, video games mimic many of the psychological mechanisms of actual gambling, things such as rewards, near misses, and the constant drive for one more try. Sound familiar for anyone who's ever gambled before? The study emphasizes that game design elements such as loot boxes, reward chests, and randomized upgrades may act as, quote, early conditioning for gambling behaviors later in life. So not only are these mechanisms forcing kids or making kids want to keep playing the games, it's also conditioning them for later on to jump into things like sports gambling, cards, and all those things. So not good. So takeaway, parents should monitor gaming habits closely, especially multiplayer titles with unpredictable reward systems. If your teen is gaming daily, they're at a much higher risk for downstream gambling problems. I mean, that's one reason why you should monitor your kids if they're using these games. And if you're an adult too, like just be aware of your usage of it. But I can give you other ones. How about like get outside, interact with real people, get some vitamin D, exercise, be social. I mean, gaming in general, sorry if you're a gamer, if you're going to do it like everything else, please do it in moderation. And if you're a parent, be mindful of how this could impact your children long term. Next up, some news about the exploding wellness industry. So according to new reporting from Fit Insider, the global wellness economy, which is fitness, nutrition, mental health, recovery, supplements, tech, beauty, and more, is accelerating toward a staggering $10 trillion valuation. So if you're an investor, you might want to look into this wellness economy. So highlights from the report: the wellness economy grew 12% year over year, outpacing global GDP. The fitness and physical activity sector now exceeds $1 trillion on its own. Mental wellness spending is approaching $400 billion. Recovery and longevity tools, things such as cold plunges, wearables, peptides, biological age testing. I use 3 of those 4 are among the fastest growing segments. Younger adults are driving demand for sober, curious lifestyles. Let's go. Sleep optimization and strength focused training. Wow, you wonder why I picked this one out. These are all things that matter to me. So Fit Insider notes, quote, wellness has become the world's most powerful consumer identity. People no longer dabble in health. They build their entire lifestyle around it. Takeaway, if you want to place a bet on the future, in your future health, bet on people seeking to live longer, stronger, cleaner, and calmer lives. This industry is only getting started. I'm proof of it. I have over the last 5 years, especially, I mean, it's my 41st birthday this week, especially as I'm starting to age, right? And contemplate mortality, longevity, all those things. I'm starting to move in these directions. Things like cold plunges, wearable technology, biological aid testing, blood work. This episode today is actually about blood work. You know, the importance of getting it regularly and assessing it and reacting to it. So it's no surprise to me, but these numbers are staggering. A $10 trillion valuation for the wellness economy going forward. Let's go. Your next health and fitness headline has to do with California sober, leading to short-term benefits, but long-term risks. So a new study published in Addiction Research and Theory, summarized by Medical Express, examined whether replacing alcohol with cannabis, or THC, the active ingredient, what some call California sober, actually improves health, like truly improves health. So researchers studied 1,335 young adults over 12 months and found in the first 3 months, participants who substituted cannabis drank less alcohol and reported fewer hangovers. That seems obvious. By 12 months, most had either returned to pre-study drinking levels or increased cannabis use. So not good. Long-term outcomes showed, quote, mixed or negative effects, especially when high-potency cannabis was involved. And participants reported more anxiety symptoms over time. So lead author Dr. Jordan Steele said, quote, switching from alcohol to cannabis may offer short-term relief, but it tends to create new problems rather than solve old ones long term. So as I think about this, there really is no shortcut. Takeaway here, I personally, from people that I know, and I have personally found that in the short term, if you're drinking too much and you want to cut that down, and you feel like you need something, some headspace shift, THC products can work, and this study supports that because you're basically turning to one thing over another, normally to cope with stress, rumination, or sometimes to just get a little heightened experience. I get that. But what this study is saying is that long term, if you're switching from alcohol to cannabis, and let's just say you weren't a previous cannabis user, long term, now you're introducing another potential harmful habit, and this study shows that alcohol can creep back in, but then you've still got this new habit you got to deal with. So California sober, if it's a lifestyle and you don't go back to drinking, maybe it's good. But if you're just looking for a fix to your drinking, there are healthier solutions out there. And your last health and fitness headline, it's wintertime, and we might want to be looking at our eating habits. So a new piece from The Independent highlights research showing that shifting dinner earlier, especially during the darker winter months, may improve metabolism, appetite regulation, and sleep. So the article draws from multiple studies, a Harvard study showing that eating late increases hunger hormones and reduces next day calorie burn, a Spanish chrononutrition study finding that early eaters, dinner earlier in the night, lose 25% more fat on the same amount of calories versus eating later at night. Interesting. And research in cell metabolism demonstrates that late night eating disrupts circadian rhythm and glucose control. As leading chronobiology researcher, Dr. Marta Gorelet explains, quote, our metabolism is just not the same at night. Eating earlier gives the body time to process food efficiently when metabolic function is its highest. So this isn't surprising to me either. So many people advocate for trying to cut off those late calories. I mean, personally, I will try to have my last calorie around like 6:30. I go to bed around 10. So that's something that I follow and get good results. But just some takeaways. If you want better energy, improved glucose control, less late night snacking, and easier fat loss this winter, aim to eat dinner before 7 o'clock, assuming you're on a normal sleep cycle and you're not working nights or anything like that. Limit your late night calories, keep protein high because it helps you stay less hungry, if that's proper grammar. Keep meals simple and align eating hours with natural light exposure. That's a great way to put it. So that's it for this week's health and fitness headlines. Hope you have an amazing Thanksgiving holiday. Just a quick word from our sponsor, Purist Nutrition, and then Dr. Jake joins us on the other side. We'll see you there. All right, let's be honest. You're probably not a professional athlete with a personal chef and unlimited recovery time. If you're like me, you're hitting the gym at 5 a.m. before work or squeezing in training between meetings, just trying to stay consistent while life keeps throwing you curveballs. That's exactly who Purist Nutrition was made for. Purist keeps it simple. NSF certified supplements with minimal, clean ingredients that actually taste good. No artificial ingredients and no proprietary blends where you're guessing what you're taking. Just premium actives like CreaPure, the purest creatine on the planet, whey isolate protein that is US sourced and easy on the stomach, and hydration that keeps you going without all the extra sugar or sodium. Whether you're a parent juggling kids and training, or just someone who refuses to compromise on quality, Purist Nutrition fits your routine. Built for tomorrow, science-backed, tested and trusted by athletes, and most importantly, effective. Visit puristnutrition.com to see the full lineup of quality supplements. That's puristnutrition.com, because your nutrition should work as hard as you do. All right, everybody, welcome back. I'm here with this week's special guest, Dr. Jake Huebner. How you doing, Jake?
I'm doing good. Thanks, Jesse.
You're welcome. I have to ask this, even though we're friends and we know each other, is it okay if I call you Jake instead of Dr. Huebner during this conversation?
That's fine. Yeah, I'm cool with that. Yeah. Okay, most of my patients just call me Jake anyway too, so it's fine.
All right, yeah. Jake. We'll get into this, but what I just want to call out too, man, I feel as though we've been talking about here and there, you coming on this show since I started back on Veterans Day 23, and it's been a long time coming, and I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, man, I've been excited for this, so.
My pleasure. Just so the audience gets a good understanding of who you are, why don't you, in your own words, just kind of give your background a little bit? Is that okay?
Yeah, for sure. So I studied, went to undergrad in Taylor University, Indiana, chiropractic school in St. Louis, at Logan University. Definitely went more of the kind of scientific route, evidence-based route with chiropractic. So when I treat patients, it's a lot more of like rehab. Sessions are longer, about an hour long each time. So we're getting into much more than just kind of traditional chiropractic. And then trained in functional medicine at the Institute of Functional Medicine. And then when it comes to, that got me into the genetics and bloodwork side of things. So then 3x4 Genetics is the company that I'm kind of partnered with as well, doing genetic stuff. And bloodwork has just been years and years of being interested in it, and getting into chiropractic school, and then functional medicine, kind of just get more training on that and being able to read results and give people lifestyle changes and recommendations based on that. And then about 15 years worth of training in sports, in the gym, bodybuilding, powerlifting, all of that kind of works in tandem with everything too, just life experience combined with the actual education on it. So that's kind of a little background.
Yeah. And as far as the training goes, just to double click on that for a second, because you said you've done bodybuilding, powerlifting. Right now, as we're talking, what are you focusing on from a strength training and just overall health aspect?
Bodybuilding right now, I'm focused on kind of actually more just the aesthetic part of it. I will always train heavy unless I get, when I get really dieted down, the risk to reward ratio is just not there for training. You go as heavy as you can without risking injury. But right now it's more bodybuilding and focused and more higher volume, all that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know we're going to jump into genetic testing and blood work, which is, I think, people are starting to really feel that that's becoming more and more important and common. I think a lot of people, myself included, want to learn about it. But before I do, I just have to ask, because I'm curious. I love asking people about their splits and their routine.
Okay.
So you're in bodybuilding. What are you running right now?
Yeah. So I do a 6-day split. Typically I take 1 day off, some days 2, we have a 5-month-old. So sometimes I need 1 more day to take off just to watch him, so my wife can go do her stuff. But right now I usually do like chest and biceps, back and triceps. And then I'll do a leg workout that's quad focused. And then I'll do shoulders and abs, maybe a little bit of arms in there. And then I'll do a leg day that's hamstring focused. And then I'll just do like an accessory day, just doing maybe bench a little bit more, or maybe do some other back stuff, other quad movements. So that's kind of, I think that's 6 days. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like upper, lower, shoulder, ab, lower 2, and then just, I'll call it fun day.
Yeah, fun day. And right now that's been more just cardio, trying to get on the Stairmaster for 20, 30 minutes. doing that, and then just walks and stuff like that. So
Gotcha. I always have to ask, man. I talk to so many people who are
yeah.
jacked and fit like you, and I want to know, how are you doing it?
Yeah.
Let's get into the topic at hand, which I'm so stoked to learn about, especially because on the back end of this conversation, you're literally going to review my hot off the press results and in real time, give me your feedback. I'm a little nervous about that, but I'm going to start, dude, with probably like a super obvious question, but there's probably some good nuggets in it. But like genetic testing, blood work, what is that? And why is it important for people to focus on that in their health?
Yeah, so a great way to kind of frame your mind on genetic testing and blood work is obviously there's different types of genetic testing. There's ones that look for cancer screenings and, other underlying diseases. The ones that I focus on are like more metabolic focused, your metabolic health, when it comes down to food, diet, exercise, inflammation, detoxification, all of those types of things. There's more metabolic focus. That's what I focus on. So I'm not screening people for cancer or anything like that genetically. So just to kind of, but blood work is going to give us more of a snapshot into what's currently happening. So your blood work that you sent me, that's a snapshot of what's happening right now with Jesse, versus your genetics is going to give a broad overview of how you work. So genetics the way I look at it is genetics kind of load the gun. You're like a loaded gun. Your genetics determine how that gun is loaded. And then your lifestyle essentially pulls that trigger. So for instance, if you may be predisposed to several different things. So like for you mentioned cholesterol, you may be predisposed to high cholesterol, but your lifestyle is going to determine whether or not you actually have high cholesterol. And when I say high cholesterol, there's LDL, HDL. HDL's good cholesterol and LDL's bad. I put air quotes around that because there's more research coming out about, you have that. It's not necessarily bad or good. It's just, and we'll get into why LDL is considered bad. But, so again, genetics are going to kind of load that gun. Your lifestyle essentially pulls the trigger. And so health equals, essentially what I say is health equals genetics and your choices. So your choices that you make every day, that combined with your genetics that's why some guys can get huge and super jacked and fit and put a ton of time and effort into it, but it's easier for them to get built muscle, versus some guys, hard gainers, as we call them, they could eat all the food in the world and still struggle to gain weight or something like that. So people are just predisposed to that stuff. And, so genetics can be a huge underlying factor of some of that stuff, but again, kind of shows your potential with genetics. And your blood work will actually kind of show whether you're falling within your genetics, or you are always falling within your genetics, but blood work will kind of show if you're essentially pulling that trigger or not.
No, it does. And not that another metaphor is needed, but hearing that, what I'm learning here, it's kind of like your genetics is the hand that you've been dealt. And then your blood work is like how you play the hand. And then
that's almost a better explanation of mine. So that's called epigenetics, and epigenetics is how you can turn off and on genes. And so there's a term, you've probably heard about this. It's really popular, especially if you've listened to anything with Gary Brecka, which I'm hit or miss on Gary Brecka, but it talks about methylation quite a bit. And so methylation is essentially, it controls essentially the process of repairing damaged DNA. So it assists in epigenetics in terms of turning off and on genes. So that's not the best way to say that, but epigenetics is your ability to turn off and on genes. There's some genes you can't turn off, like your eye color. You can't turn that off or on, but like metabolic health, I'm predisposed to diabetes just based on my family's history. But I've been able to essentially turn off those genes through lifestyle changes.
We're going to get into that. For sure. But it sounds like through the lens of fitness and health, if I'm understanding, some of us might have these genes that could benefit us, that through lifestyle changes, you could see the benefits. And at the same time, you could have genes that put you at risk. And then through the same mechanism, which is lifestyle changes, you can kind of mitigate, if not just eradicate that risk.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's where the blood work helps us see if we're doing that or not.
Got it. Okay. So when you're thinking through that lens, let's focus on both the genetic testing and the blood work. If you had to kind of call out, I'm even like picturing you opening up my report and going to what I'll define as like the most important or the most impactful, whatever you deem as a professional, like, let me look at these first. What are those markers, if that's the right word?
Yeah, I think anything that has to do with chronic inflammation markers. So high sensitivity CRP is a big one. So anything that has to do with cardiac health, metabolic health. So of course, insulin, glucose, even like ApoB or lipoprotein. ApoB is essentially what that is. And you're one of your markers on there was the ApoB lipoprotein. So we'll look at that, and that's essentially has to do with cholesterol, plaque buildup. So you could have really high LDL cholesterol, but if you don't have high ApoB, then you're okay, essentially. But if your ApoB is high with high LDL, the main biomarkers that I look at that are most important, for sure, testosterone, estrogen. We're going to look at inflammation markers, high sensitivity CRP, glucose, insulin. I would say those are probably the primary ones I'm looking at. Vitamin D, and a lot of those just kind of give you an idea of other biomarkers that are probably high. But so a lot of times you look at insulin, if it's really high, that can really correlate to glucose. So I'm more interested in actually someone's insulin level than I am their glucose level, because that's a better indicator of really if there's bad things happening or good things happening, is looking at insulin rather than glucose. Both matter, but I'm more focused on insulin. But yeah, that would say the high sensitivity CRP, glucose, insulin, testosterone, estrogen, and it's different for men and women. Women have a lot more of the, some of these sex hormones like progesterone, FSH, LH, all of those are prominent in men too, but not to the extent they are for women. So it just depends on gender, age too, matters a lot as well. And then genetics as well.
Yeah, it's funny, like in layman's terms, right? Like when I went and signed up for this blood panel, I'm 40, I'll be 41 November 27th. Like what I was thinking through in layman's terms, like what do I want to know if I lift up the hood internally? Because I know what I look like. I know my strength. I track all that. And the things that I was like, okay, my dad developed diabetes and there's lots of cancer in my family. My mom's side, there's a lot of anxiety. So that said, like, I'm thinking like, what are my hormones, which I don't know, testosterone. I have not known before today. And I'm sure you're going to unpack that. I don't know how to put this, but like, am I on the pathway to being insulin resistant or diabetic? Like, so I'm wondering about that. I don't know. Do I have inflammation in my body? I barely know what that means, but I know it's not good. My organs, my liver from, years of, drinking too much, like is my organ shot? How do I know? Cortisol, like I know what I should be worried about, but I don't know how to figure out if I have an issue. And then I think most importantly, what do I do if I do have that issue? When in your experience, when you're meeting with clients and whatnot, what are some of the most common issues that you see?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I would say, again, different for men and women. So men, most common, who I mostly work with are men. I do work with some women, but primarily men. Men, I would say a lot of fatigue and just lack of motivation and fatigue, and just starting to kind of be like, man, I don't feel like going to the gym. They start to get kind of that spare tire around the waist. So I would say like borderline metabolic syndrome, where they're so the metabolism starting to slow down. They're not necessarily, they kind of are eating the way they did 20 years ago, when you're like a furnace in your 20s and you can eat anything and you just burn it right off. So like lifestyle hasn't matched, because again, age is just a number for sure, but there are some things that you have to be aware of as you age. Things do start to slow down, especially being able to gain muscle, all of that. So their lifestyle hasn't necessarily changed as they've aged, and you do need to change some things as you age. So I say with men, more prominently, I just see starting to just gain fat and adipose tissue, less activity because they're not motivated, and just starting to get more irritable. Yep. And then just low sex drive. I was about to say.
I was going to say libido. I was wondering if you deal with that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say that's a really common one. You guys are always kind of embarrassed to talk about it. It's like, hey man, it's like, unfortunately, it's like more normal now than it ever has been, which is pretty unfortunate.
Look, if you're like me, you enjoy a drink every now and then. A glass of wine with dinner, a cold beer after a long week, maybe even a night out with friends. But you want to stay in control. That's why I'm excited about Clutch, the newest innovation from Or Health. Clutch is a fast-acting naltrexone mint you take before you drink. It dissolves quickly, absorbs through your mouth, and starts working fast. helping you curb the cravings without giving up drinking altogether. It's discreet, portable, and designed for real life. The mints come in a sleek, pocket-sized case that goes wherever you go. If you've been trying to moderate or simply drink smarter, this is the tool that you need. To get started, text STRENGTH to 710-710. That's STRENGTH to 710-710. Answer a few quick questions, and your clutch will be shipped directly to your door. No more hangovers, no more guilt, just the control you need in the palm of your hand. Bulletproof your drinking with Clutch now. Jake, anything else you want to share just about genetic testing, blood work, or anything, how it all works together before we go into my free consultation that I'm going to get from you in a second here?
I don't want people to, I think people get, when they do genetic testing, they get freaked out. Like I'll have a lot of people message me, so am I dying, or whatever. It's like, no, this is, and a lot of the genetic stuff is just, like I said, it's it's more of that, like what you said, it's the kind of the hand you've been dealt. Does not determine your destiny by any means in terms of your physical health. You may just have a harder time doing certain things, but so when genetics matter a ton, just to get an idea of your health, but it's not the end all be all. And I've seen people in the worst shape of their lives, just from a blood work and genetic point of view, just have everything going against them, and they still get in the best shape of their life at 50 years old. So it's not a death sentence by any means.
Amen. Amen. And on that point, one more question. If you had to pick an age that you would recommend people to venture into genetic testing and blood work for the first time, is there like an across the board, like, hey, you turned 30, you should do this? Or does it really vary based on circumstances?
I think it varies based on circumstances. But I would say 25 to 30 years old, like men and women should be looking at genetic testing, because that kind of doing it earlier, like that, is just going to allow you to kind of set yourself up for success later. So if you I'm going to start getting into it when I'm, in my 40s or 50s. Now you kind of potentially have to play catch up with some of that stuff. Not impossible. Again, I've had guys start when they're 50 and have great results in a year, but I think the earlier you can get ahead of it, the better. Just understanding your body, how it works. So then you can make better decisions down the road of, oh yeah, I have this going on genetically. I should probably avoid eating, these types of food. And we can even get to the timing of food with different people's genetics and stuff. So I think the earlier 25 to 30 is like a great place to start doing that. So you can start kind of preparing yourself and getting in better habits.
Yeah. And just thinking through myself, I just got my first comprehensive panel this week. And like I said, I'll be 41. Now that I have it, and I'm about to hear what you're going to have to say about it, I think it'd be helpful for me to have had a baseline from like way earlier in my life. Like, let's just say it was 25. That way, like someone like you can look at it and be like, all right, here's where you are. Here's where you were. Like, you've always been this way, or you've gotten worse, you've gotten better, but just having that baseline earlier in life, I feel like would be super helpful, Yeah.
And along with that, I would say people should be doing blood work about at least 2 times a year, every 6 months. I think it's really helpful to get blood work done. So now that you've done it, I would say just plan on 6 months doing it again.
Roger that. All right. You ready to get into me?
Yeah.
Lift up the hood. I'll set some quick context. So I had a fasted blood draw on Monday morning. I did that because I knew Mr. Jake here was coming on the show, and it was 65 markers, whatever you call them. It sounds like it's not genetic testing, right, Jake?
Blood work, typically genetic testing is like a cheek swab. And you're doing that. So blood work and genetic testing are different for sure. Yeah.
Well, I did a cheek swab for ancestry.com, but I wonder if I can pull that stuff and send that to you too. I don't know.
Yeah. So Ancestry's, it won't look at the metabolic stuff, like the physical health. It'll look more at like, here's who you're related to, who you're related to. And it's also going to look kind of, because I think they bought out 23andMe or vice versa. It kind of looks more at like, you are more likely to have blue eyes, and it's like stuff like that. Versus the 3x4 genetics, which is what I use for my clients. That's all metabolic related, like physical health. Yep.
Got it. Different test entirely. But I got those results. We got the last 3 biomarkers this morning. I shot them over to Jake. He took a look at them, and I'll just ask Jake, how am I doing, man?
Yeah. So overall, you're doing really good, Jesse. And I'll just be kind of glancing over to you and to my sheet here of kind of what I wrote down for you. So we'll kind of just cover the stuff that was in what we call high ranges. So there's a difference between functional ranges and optimal ranges. Functional ranges, I made a post about this a couple months ago. Functional ranges are kind of based on the population as a whole, like 95% of the population. We're looking at these ranges, and they could be super healthy or kind of not very healthy. So those ranges are a little more broad. When we're talking about optimal ranges, we're getting into a lot narrower of a group. So like for glucose, let's say, that functional range is pretty wide. It's like, hey, 99 or like 50 to 99 or something like that. And versus like an optimal range, we want it between 70 and 80, ideally, in that optimal range. So that's kind of the difference between when you see functional ranges, they're okay to be in there, but we would rather be in optimal ranges. So, and that also depends on age. But okay, so first one on here was a liver enzyme called alanine aminotransferase, so ALT. That was in borderline high. Optimal range for a male in his 40s would be between 10 and 30 UL, which is just the unit they measure that in. So this could indicate some mild, again, I'm a chiropractor, so I'm not going to be diagnosing anything. It's just advice and kind of just for more educational purposes. It may indicate some mild liver inflammation, maybe some poor detoxification, or some metabolic stress that you're going through. So sometimes these are increased with really intense exercise. So that could be part of it too. You just had an intense workout, you go do a blood draw. Yeah, there you go. See? So sometimes we got to take that into account is your liver does kind of work a little harder when you're exercising really hard. So sometimes those liver enzymes are slightly increased.
I'm hearing liver, and I'm wondering about alcohol, because the liver I know is impacted by alcohol. Could that be a driver of something like that?
Yep, for sure. So if you've had a past history of alcohol use, you could have some residual effects for like that for a long time. Not saying it's going to be there forever with your lifestyle that you have now, Jesse, and maintaining that and of course, we talked about the nicotine too. That can also affect things like this. Because essentially the liver has two phases of detoxification. So it has to, when we consume alcohol or other drugs, the liver has to essentially work in overtime to detoxify and get rid of those toxins. So what I put in here too is some genes that there's about 5 different genes that could play a role in this too. That would be interesting to look at from a genetic point of view. I won't go into the full names of them. So like GSTP1, GSTM1, HO1, PPARA, CYP1A. The most common ones with these ones, PPARA, which regulates fatty acid oxidation in the liver. And then also CYP1A2 is a phase 1 liver enzyme for caffeine and toxin metabolism. So it's probably, I don't know if necessarily you have this gene. If you did have this gene, drinking alcohol and drugs and all that stuff are definitely going to be like pulling the trigger on that loaded gun. You
mentioned caffeine, pulling you out of the zone here, but I don't know if there's like a diagnostic manual to basically just diagnose someone with a caffeine addiction, but if there is, I'm on it. I probably have.
Me too.
Shoot, man. I don't know how many milligrams I have, but I can tell you I've had 5 double espressos today. Is overconsumption, you're laughing at me, is over consuming caffeine, could that have an impact on these tests if I'm currently?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, a lot of caffeine can be hard on vessel walls. It's a vasoconstrictor. So if you're doing that in combination with nicotine.
Oof, dang it.
Is from a cardiac point of view, we want to avoid the combination of those most of the time. Just because you could have an increased cardiovascular risk with taking, because they're both vasoconstrictors. So we just want to, so like trying to do like beetroot supplements or beet juice, that stuff's vasodilators. So that's a great way to, so that's like a lot of pre-workouts have L-arginine or citrulline. Those are vasodilators. That's what causes the pump. It opens up blood vessels. You get more blood into the muscle. That gives you that pump feeling. So vasodilators are great.
Got it. So my routine of having a double espresso and putting in a nicotine pouch when I walk to the bus stop is not good. So when I usually get to the bus stop and I feel a little crazy, you're telling me that that's the culprit? Okay.
Yeah, not an ideal combination, but
all right, roger that. We'll do. I'll do better, sir.
Yeah.
Let's keep going. Sorry.
So then the one I talked, no, you're good. The one I talked about earlier was the apolipoprotein B. And you had mentioned me on the phone, not in our conversation on here. You were talking about that you have some family history of high cholesterol, but it seems to be benign. So there is something called benign cholesterolemia or hypercholesterolemia, which essentially is you have high cholesterol, but it's not necessarily affecting you. But apolipoprotein B, which is, it attaches to LDL cholesterol and essentially makes it a atherogenic particle, which is what kind of builds up plaque in the vessel walls. So we want to look at ApoB more than LDL. It matters more than LDL because it's actually telling you, are your LDL particles, are they attached to these, or are these ApoB particles attached to LDL? Because that's what increases the risk of cardiovascular incidences, and that's what's going to build up plaque. So yours was on the higher range. Again, we want optimal range to be below 90 milligrams per deciliter. You were at 113. So it's not like, definitely not the highest I've ever seen by any means. Like it's that'd be very manageable. But this could indicate, a higher atherogenic particle count, which means you can see your LDL count was high and this was high. That essentially not a great combo in terms of cardiovascular health. You combine that with a lot of caffeine, and again, I'm not diagnosing anything. A lot of caffeine, nicotine. We just want to be careful about that stuff, the heart stuff. Have you had any heart stuff, past family heart stuff or anything like that?
No, I haven't. No, there's no cardiovascular disease in my family. I did go through a season when I was in my late 20s where I was having heart palpitations, and I looked into it. It was it was exercise induced cardiomyopathy. I want to say my one heart was getting bigger because I was working out too hard. But quick question on that, make sure I'm understanding. So back to the whole genetic piece, right? So correct me when I'm wrong, because I will be wrong at some point in this, right? Because I'm trying to wrap my head around your big brain. All right. So the genetic piece could be that I have elevated bad cholesterol, LDL, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You'd be the healthiest person ever and just have higher cholesterol, and it's just a genetic factor. Yep.
Which could be benign, meaning not so bad or not bad at all. However, this other acronym, this other thing is elevated, which makes the combination bad. Correct so far?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hesitant to say bad. I mean, it's not ideal from optimal health point of view, but because LDL cholesterol, which is what we call bad cholesterol, if that's high, but you have really low ApoB, not that big of a deal. But if you have high ApoB and high LDL cholesterol, those things go in tandem for just raising cardiovascular risk, not necessarily guaranteeing that you're it's just increasing risk. Yeah.
Okay. And if we can point to genetics for the high LDL, what can we point to for the high ApoG? Is that more lifestyle or something I'm doing or could do better?
So there's a gene called the ApoB gene, which essentially encodes those ApoB proteins that are essential for LDL and what we call VLDL transport. So essentially there's a gene for the ApoB. You may have both the genes for LDL cholesterol, higher cholesterol, which you probably do if it's family history, and you may even have the ApoB gene. Not saying you do 100%, but based on blood work, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw those things on blood work.
Got it. Tracking.
Testing. Yep. Mm-hmm. Next one is homocysteine. This, you could have, this was high. This was ideally optimal range for your age, between 5 and 8. You're at 13.9. So nothing like crazy, but this just levels increased risk for vascular inflammation, poor methylation, which we talked a little bit about before, and then potentially higher risk for cognitive decline earlier. But again, I always preface this, higher risk doesn't guarantee you're going to have that. I've had people have pretty much all the genes working against them and they're totally fine. You never will have any symptoms whatsoever. So they're combating it in a good way. But so there's multiple genes that go into this. The biggest one that most people have probably heard about is the MTHFR gene, which essentially converts folate into methyl donor forms, which helps control methylation. And methylation is pretty much involved in every cellular pathway in the body. Methylation's involved. The main function of methylation is primarily the repair of damaged DNA.
Got it. Okay.
The vascular inflammation kind of goes in tandem with the ApoB and the LDL cholesterol stuff. So for you, if we were to do genetic testing, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw vascular health at a very high impact on your health in terms of the genetic stuff. So like so we have with genetic testing, the test I do, you have a low impact, medium impact, high impact, and very high impact. The very high impact we spend most of the time on because we're making sure, and high impact means you're at a higher risk for these things.
Yep. Tracking.
Yep. So the next one was iron saturation. So that was at 64%, which is considered high. Optimal range typically between 25 and 45%. This could have to do with essentially poor excretion of iron, but also leading to oxidative damage. Oxidative stress essentially is rusting of the body and how fast that happens. So, and in terms of, there's multiple genes that go into that. But biggest thing is this probably is increasing oxidative stress. And again, some of these kind of go hand in hand with other things that we've talked about, but oxidative stress, rusting of the body, we obviously want to hold off rusting of the body as long as possible. Again, not guaranteeing that you have any of this stuff, but the blood work shows that obviously it's more of a snapshot of what's going on right now, but I can't necessarily I can give like lifestyle and diet recommendation stuff. I can't say, yeah, go take this, whatever, you have to be careful with that.
How am I doing on the, pre-diabetic, insulin resistant, blood glucose, like that whole thing? How's that looking?
Yeah. So if we go back and we look at glucose is at 82, which is optimal range. That's really good. And earlier I said 70 to 80. You could say it depends on where you find your information. It could be 70 to 85. It could be 75 to 80. Yeah. And then your insulin was 2.9, which is amazing. So I would say, on that front, you're doing great.
Awesome. But it's the heart. It's the heart risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if I were to do a genetic test with you, I wouldn't be surprised if the cardiovascular section was at a very high impact.
Got it.
Yes, it looks good there. Your testosterone looked really, really good. 882. I don't know if you want me to say that on the show, but 882.
Dude, you say that number and I'm telling you, man, I don't know. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know.
That's, do you do TRT, HRT, like hormone replacement therapy? Yeah, that's solid, man. 882 is yeah. Like most guys that I get coming to my office are like below 300, and
really?
Which is and so a lot of those guys are having the fatigue and just the lack of motivation, low libido, all that stuff. That stuff plays a huge role. So I've had a guy come in at 120, which was like the lowest, and he was like in his 20s. He did some steroids and some other stuff and some SARMs that definitely affected stuff, but 882, if for your age, is pretty outstanding. That's awesome. Yeah.
Let's go.
Good job, Jesse. Yeah.
Good test, but I could drop dead of a heart attack tomorrow.
Yeah. And then your estrogen was 31, which is perfect as well. So you're not converting a ton of your testosterone to estrogen. So you're doing really good on that front. Your free testosterone was 125. So free testosterone matters the most. That's the testosterone that's available to build muscle, to, help with all that stuff. So that's at 125.3. So that's amazing. So
that's good too. Okay. Let's go.
Good job, man. Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing, but it's working.
I'm glad I didn't have to embarrass you on your show, being like, oh man, you're tanked. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. That's a good takeaway for me. I got some concerning stuff, but so far that's a win. No, no pre-diabetic stuff and high T. Come on.
Yep. Doing good.
Let's be honest. Most of us don't have a private gym, a full-time trainer, or hours every day to lift. If you're like me, you don't even have time to commute to a local gym. You're training early in the morning or carving out 40 minutes between work, kids, and everything else competing for your time. And when fitness matters that much to your well-being and your health, you've got to have home fitness equipment that's as strong and reliable as you are. That is exactly why I use Rep Fitness. Rep is built for people who train with purpose, people who need high-quality, reliable equipment engineered for real strength. Designed right here in Colorado, USA, Rep Fitness provides racks, benches, bars, and plates that offer commercial-grade durability without commercial gym prices. Premium materials, smart engineering, and fair pricing. Whether you're outfitting your very first garage gym or upgrading your current setup to match where you want to go with your training, Rep makes gear that keeps up with your life and your goals. Visit repfitness.com to see their full lineup: racks, benches, bars, plates, conditioning tools, and everything you need to build a home gym that works as hard as you do. That's repfitness.com. It's finally time to pursue your strength.
Yeah, the next one I did want to talk about was that LDL cholesterol was high. Optimal would be below 100. Optimal for longevity would be below 80. And then you can find other information that says different stuff, but that's just what I found, and that's kind of what I stick to. Again, this is higher risk for plaque formation, especially when combined with the high ApoB. And then oxidative stress on vascular walls.
On the cholesterol thing, I heard once, and it might even be like just a myth or people talk, but like if I eat less animal-based protein or just eat less protein in general, will the amount of bad cholesterol in my blood decrease along with it? Like, is that one lever I can pull to maybe have lower cholesterol and less risk?
I have a pretty firm belief on this. I'll probably get ripped apart by some people. I really haven't found good evidence based on research to show that increased animal products, eggs, red meat, really increases the bad cholesterol over time. If anything, I think it's healthier to, again, I don't think going straight up, just only eating red meat all the time. I think just having a balanced diet. I think people kind of overcomplicate stuff, be like, I need to go carnivore, I need to go keto for this. It's like, no, you just need to have a balanced diet and just have some self-discipline to a certain extent. But no, I firmly believe, based on the research I've done, increasing animal product intake, red meat, eggs are the big ones that people talk about, does not increase, in my opinion, does not increase the bad cholesterol.
Got it. Yeah, because I'm eating about 250 grams of protein, and I'm not tracking. I just love it. And I've always wondered that. But it sounds like there's no real correlation between consumption of animal products and cholesterol, at least not one that's going to make a difference. That's helpful to know.
And the 250 grams of protein, is that all coming from red meat and eggs, or is that mainly, is it like chicken, fish? Okay.
Chicken, fish, probably a couple times a week. I don't really eat red meat, not because I'm avoiding it. I just don't really like it, which I thought like, okay, fine. That's one less thing. But it's mainly, eggs, so whey protein powder, chicken, turkey, fish, tuna, like pretty healthy sources. I think I don't really focus too much on organic in the source. I should probably do that. But yeah, I've always wondered if I lower my protein intake in general, will it impact my cholesterol? Sounds like it won't, which is a win for me. It's another win. I can keep eating my protein.
Yep. And especially just goes to show if you're not eating a ton of red meat anyway, and not a ton of eggs, and you still have the higher cholesterol and all that stuff. So it again shows not always a correlation between those two things, but.
Got it. Okay.
Sex hormone binding globulin.
Sounds fun. That sounds fun.
Yeah. Right. So that's one of the sex hormones. This was actually high. If you have higher testosterone, this can be a little higher. It's at 69, and typically we're looking for 20 to 55. If you have higher levels of this, it can lower your free testosterone. May affect thyroid, or reflect thyroid and liver stress if you have really high. But again, yours isn't like sky high or anything like that. So essentially, high sex hormone binding globulin can reduce free testosterone and reflect liver and thyroid stress, which we've already kind of encountered. You might have some liver stress. So there might be, a correlation between those two.
Yeah, let me ask you this real quick. So free testosterone, I think I heard you say earlier, is basically the testosterone that your body can use, layman's terms, for the positive benefits of muscle growth and all that. But I think I heard you just say this other thing impacts free testosterone, but that thing is high. Does that mean that if I have higher free testosterone, but this other thing is high, that it's kind of mitigating some of the potential, reducing some of the benefits of having free testosterone?
Yeah. So what happens when you have really high sex hormone binding globulin, and it may just have to be really, really high, because obviously it's not necessarily affecting you right now. Again, it would be nice, like you said, to have maybe tests from 10, 15 years ago to kind of compare them. But it'd be interesting to look in 6 months to see how some of this has changed. But so what happens with high, I won't get into the process of it, but the high sex hormone binding globulin, or SHBG, essentially can potentially reduce your free testosterone, which can then now mitigate the benefits of having higher free testosterone. But high sex hormone binding globulin, if you're a really healthy individual like you are, could reflect some liver stress, which we've uncovered already. You potentially have some liver stress. So I Again, not diagnosing that, but just based on my personal opinion from looking at everything, I'm like, yep, those kind of things go together.
Makes sense. It's a pattern. Got it. Tracking.
Monocytes. Have you been sick or anything recently?
Never. Okay.
Have you never been sick?
I've been sick in my life, but I'm known around these parts, meaning my wife knows that I have a very good immune system. So no, I don't get sick a lot.
Yep. So monocytes were slightly elevated, 9.5%. We're looking for 4 to 8% optimally. This just indicates mild immune activation and chronic inflammation potentially. Again, some of this could be to some of the inflammation you potentially have in your liver and in the vascular walls. So not too worried about that one. Total and non-HDL cholesterol was high. So total cholesterol, we're looking for optimally between 150 and 200. Non-HDL, which is LDL, VLDL, we're looking at below 130 typically. Again, this ties in exactly what we talked about earlier with LDL and lipoprotein B.
Got it. So those are all of the things that you would say not necessarily concerned about, but different in that they're out of the optimal range and should be aware of, right?
Yes, especially with how healthy you are. We always, want to pay attention to some of these things even more. It's like, because all of these are kind of relating to one another for the most part. In all of these, we can see a correlation between pretty much every single one of these biomarkers being elevated or slightly elevated. So yeah, I think, if I had to give a lifestyle recommendation for you, for sure cutting out nicotine and cutting out not all your caffeine, but reducing your caffeine intake for sure by half, maybe even more. I hate to say it.
I could do the nicotine one. You can't tell me with caffeine.
I would say we start with nicotine because it also depends genetically. People clear caffeine differently than other people, because some people are like, I'm so sensitive to caffeine. I'm not. I could drink a monster, like one of those white monsters before bed. I'll fall asleep in an hour. Like it does not affect me whatsoever. But
this is exactly where I wanted to go. So based on everything you're seeing, if I was one of your clients, right, and you're like, okay, here's your reports, here's some lifestyle recommendations. You just gave me 2 low-hanging fruit, not that easy to do, cutting down on nicotine. I can do it. Caffeine. But I'll tell you some things that I am doing regularly. So you have the full picture of Jesse. And then you can combine that, maybe give me a couple other kind of pointers out there. So what am I doing? I'm cold plunging 4 to 5 times a week for 3 minutes at 45 degrees in the morning. I'm working out with resistance training 5 times a week. That's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Doesn't matter what the split is, but picture like both, all muscle groups twice a week, right? Compound movements up front with blending into hypertrophy. Zone 2, I probably get about 90 minutes of intentional steady state cardio every single week. I do 1 high intensity session for about 10 to 15 minutes. My diet, it's well-rounded. I focus on carb timing, meaning I eat most of my carbohydrates if I'm working out first thing in the morning after, and then I kind of taper them off. If I'm working out in the afternoon, I try to put all of my carbohydrates like right around the workout. I'm assuming that might be because I use carbohydrates as like a tool, might be some of the reason why you're seeing like healthy around like the blood glucose thing, I'm guessing. And then, I do drink twice a week typically. And I think that could be some of the liver stuff that you're seeing there. I talked about the nicotine. I'm over consuming caffeine. And then I average of actual sleep about 6 hours, 15 minutes to 6.5 every single night. My assumption is I can do better there, but I will say I get a very high percentage of quality sleep in the REM and deep categories when I do sleep. But other than that, moderate to high stress in my life with essentially 2 jobs and 3 little kids. And I can't think of anything else to share with you, but that's kind of like me in a nutshell. So when you think about that, and then what you're looking at, what other advice would you give me to reduce the risk on some of the stuff that we just talked about based on my results?
Yep, that's a really good question. So I would say for sure, stress management. Sounds like you do a pretty good job at that. I don't have a clear picture of everything you're doing. Stress management is crucial. I don't drink at all, only for purely health benefits of it. In my opinion, there's not really any sort of healthy amount of drinking. Yeah, so it's poison, and regardless if you have it and you have 1 drink or you have 10, it's just poison. Again, I'm not here to judge anybody what they do. I have my own vices. I overconsume caffeine for sure. And so, we all have our own stuff, but, in terms for you specifically, I would just cut out all alcohol, if you can. All alcohol, for sure, cutting out the nicotine, pretty much all of it. And I'm only telling you this, cut it out all the way, because I know you. I know how disciplined you are. I know if I tell you something, you're like, yeah, I'll do that. I have to tailor that to everybody, because if I go to somebody who's 300 pounds, they're 150 pounds overweight, and I just go like, okay, we're going to totally flip your life upside down. That's just not going to happen. Like, they're going to be like, yeah, see you later. Hey, let's just switch your Dr. Pepper to Diet Dr. Pepper. I've literally done that with somebody where it's like, they're over consuming everything. I'm like, hey, we're just going to take out your Dr. Pepper and switch it with Diet Dr. Pepper. Like, oh, okay. And they do that. They do something else, and they do something else. For you, I'm being a little more aggressive just because I know you, and I know that you're just different than a lot of those people. So, but I would say cut out all alcohol, cut out all nicotine, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw, and then just reducing caffeine as much as you can. Start with those two things, though. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw those in 6 months. You did another blood work, even 3 months, if not a couple, or if all of those biomarkers improved.
Gosh, nicotine, caffeine, and alcohol.
With your sleep, I'm not too worried about the 6 hours, 15 minutes. It sounds like you have pretty good sleep hygiene, which is going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time, getting that deep sleep. I run off about 6 to 7 hours of sleep, and I function very highly off of that. And again, that's a genetic factor. Some people literally just don't need as much sleep as other people. And versus like my wife, she's like, it's got to be 8 or 9. Otherwise it's not great for her. She's great. She's very patient, but you can just tell she needs that 8 to 9 to be like at her highest level, for me, I can do that 6 to 7 and be okay. Yeah. So, yep. So that's what I would say for you is improve sleep where you can, but it sounds like you're doing pretty good. Cut out nicotine, cut out alcohol, and maybe just reduce the caffeine intake for a little bit. I won't take that away from you completely.
All right. Yeah. Fair enough. And you can definitely shoot me your Venmo and send me an invoice, whatever you want, because I definitely just got a free consultation from Pro.
Oh, no. No, Andy.
Hey, Dr. Huebner, one last question for you, and then I'll ask you to direct anyone listening to find you and follow you and learn from you. But what advice would you give anybody who's like kind of on the fence or thinking about or maybe hearing about this for the first time if they want to move in a direction to incorporate genetic testing and blood work into their overall health plan?
I would just get the testing done. Start there. All this stuff can sound overwhelming to people. It's like, hey, just start with testing. Whether you use me or you use like that Function Health thing or whatever it is, do something, get testing done, and then just find someone who's very qualified to go over results with you, who's going to sit down with you for an hour or two and actually walk through results. I think that's the biggest gap I see with all this stuff is people do not like walk people through results. I have people actually just essentially hire me just to like, hey, here's my results. I like what we just did with you. Like, I don't know what I'm looking at. Like, what is this? I see all these words on here, like what's a monocyte, and so, yeah, what's the goblin hormone, but,
that's what I did. It's like, if this were the results, like I got them and I was like, oh, I don't know what to do with this. Like,
yeah, exactly, man. And so I think that's a huge gap in healthcare right now is, people are moving towards the right stuff, but we got to have people be able to interpret stuff for people because then they're just lost. So I'd say first step for people getting into this is just, you talk to me, find somebody you can talk to that you trust and just say, hey, I'm not worried about anything necessarily. Or if you are worried about something, make that known, but just get testing done. Just get blood work, a full comprehensive panel done. And there's difference between male and female ones. So you could find somebody, to ask about that, or I can help you. And then just genetic testing is super easy. 3x4 genetics is the one I really recommend. It's just amazing, but having someone walk you through the results is the key thing with those.
Awesome. And I want you to send me any links that you want my audience to look at in the description so they can find you and whatnot. But where would you direct my audience if they want to find you, follow you, learn from you, maybe even book a consultation so you can help them figure this all out?
Yeah, so primarily like my Instagram, so at Dr.Jake Huebner, Huebner spelled Huebner. It's kind of confusing, but at Dr. Jake Huebner. Best ways to message me. Email is Dr. Huebner at coloradomjc.com. You can shoot me an email. I'm just launching, hopefully by the end of this month, Spartak Health, which will be local to Colorado, but it's also part of my online platform of coaching people through blood work, genetic testing, creating, health programs for people and actually coaching them through it, doing weekly calls with people so they fully understand their health. I can empower people to take control of their health instead of just, hey, here's a fat loss program. I'll talk to you in a month. I want people to feel empowered about their health and feel excited about it and not like, okay, got all this testing done. What do I do? So yeah, and the Spartak Health locally to people in Colorado, eventually, hopefully to expand, will be, chiropractic, rehab, genetic testing, blood work, nutrition programs, weight loss programs, overall health optimization programs, hormone replacement therapy, kind of the whole gambit there. So yeah, if you have any questions about that, you just want to get testing done, you're interested about getting blood work done, just message me, on Instagram at dr.jakehuebner or email me at the drhuebner at coloradomjc.com.
Roger that. And I will collect all of those links and resources from Dr. Jake, drop them in the episode description. This is an awesome conversation, long time coming. I've got my homework, nicotine, alcohol, and caffeine. I'll get to work on it. Don't judge me if it takes a while. But man, hey, look, I really appreciate you. Thank you for joining the show, Dr. Jake.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. I appreciate it, man.
All right. Thank you. It's my pleasure. Dr. Jake Huebner, everybody. See you next time. Well, that is it for my conversation with Dr. Huebner. I had a lot of fun and learned a lot. I hope you did too. It's probably the highlight of my year to have someone like him ask me if I'm on TRT based on the results. So that was pretty awesome. I feel good. I don't feel so good about some of the other stuff, but it sounds like I've got my work cut out for me. And what was encouraging for me is, his feedback, the stuff that he asked me to do, right? Cut back on nicotine, cut out alcohol completely and lower my caffeine intake. Those things are things that I can do. They're actionable and they're possible. And I'm just going to be so curious and fascinated to see what happens if I follow that advice and then get my blood work redrawn to see if it made a difference. Maybe we'll revisit this topic with Dr. Huebner in the future. But as I always do, I just want to give my 3 takeaways from the show just to kind of summarize, because there was a lot in there. So I think the first thing that Jake recommended is, it's important to look at both a genetic test and the blood work, right? We had different metaphors, but one is genetic testing is the hand you're dealt. Blood work is an indication of how you're playing those cards. So to have that full picture in this episode, Jake did not have the genetic piece, but we could still get a lot of good information from the blood work. So if you're going to go down this road, make sure you, if you can, get both done. The second takeaway was it's really important to establish their baseline early. So get testing as early as you can for 2 reasons. 1, baselines are helpful because in the future, if you see a deviation or variance, you know that something's going on. And then 2, if you get it early and you uncover some risk factors, you can get ahead of those so you don't have problems later on in life. So I think that's important. And then the third takeaway, and this is the final one, is don't just get the test results. Make sure that you seek professional guidance on how to interpret them, and most importantly, how to understand what you can do to impact anything that puts you at risk. So those are my 3 takeaways from the show. And I hope you had even more than that, right? Because there was a lot discussed. And then, last thing before we sign off, if you're already here and you're already listening and you got your phone nearby, I always have to ask if you could leave a positive rating for the show, assuming you enjoyed it. If you want to leave a review, and by the way, a review could also be a question. If you want to ask us something, that would be great, because those 2 things really help us to find other people that could benefit from the show and grow stronger weekly. Also, you can tell someone if you think this is a good episode. Really appreciate that. Or you can follow us wherever we are, Instagram, all the socials and those things. And then last thing is we monitor our email closely. It's contact@strongerweekly.com. Again, that's contact@strongerweekly.com. If you have a question, if you just want to get in touch, join our newsletter, whatever it is, reach out. We monitor it, and we do ask us anything on the show all the time. You just might hear your question asked on the show. So with that, as always, I just want to thank you for joining the Stronger Weekly podcast. We hope you learned something and hope that you grew stronger this week. We'll see you next time.